And a couple of things, given that I had 6 hours on the train to and from New York yesterday to look at the sites of all the wrecked and emptied buildings and factories all the way to New York and back. I mean, this used to be an industrial corridor. And all the houses, the row houses, and actually very, very nice houses. I mean, these row houses that I was passing on the train on the way up to New York would, if they were in D.C. right now, would be $1 million a piece. If they were in Manhattan right now, they'd be $1 million a piece. Instead, they're boarded up. They've got gang graffiti on them. And I am hearing right-wingers going off on Detroit right now about, oh, this is what happens when you let unions take over. This is what happens when you let Democrats take over. And the real subtext to all of it, and I'm hearing it over and over. In fact, Ted Nugent came out today and he said something like, this is what Robert Mugabe did to Zimbabwe. This is what happens when you let black people take over. This is the meme that the right-wingers are putting out about Detroit. And I got to tell you, I lived in Detroit. I know Detroit. I was born in Michigan. In fact, I was 2 years old. I lived in Detroit for a year. And then when I was 22, I lived in Detroit for a year because Louise was pregnant with our oldest and we needed to get health insurance. And so I moved to Detroit for a little less than a year and to get that health insurance by working as an engineer for RCA Corporation. And I've known Detroit when it was good, and I've known Detroit when it was bad. And I'll tell you, what killed Detroit was not Democrats, it was not black people, it was not unions. It was the deindustrialization of the United States. And that was brought to you courtesy of neoconservative and conservative. And, frankly, Democrats do not have, clean hands with this either. But this really began under Nixon, pushing for the whole idea of favored nation status with regard to trade. And then Reagan with permanent normalized trade relations. I think it's called PNTR, whatever it is. There's a name for it. And then of course NAFTA, CAFTA, SHAFTA, and on it goes. And Obama's carrying on the tradition now with this North Atlantic trade organization, and soon the Pacific trade, whatever you call it, conspiracy. That's what killed Detroit. So basically, the conversion of our economy from a blue-collar manufacturing economy to a white-collar banking economy. Banking used to be 8% of our economy. Now it's almost 40% of our economy. Manufacturing used to be 34% of our economy. It's now 11% of our economy. And in Detroit, manufacturing probably used to be 70% of the economy. I mean, I don't know the numbers, but it was huge. It was the same thing in Lansing. I was in Lansing for the July 4th weekend for a wedding. Same thing. And so as the manufacturing went away, these cities that are based on manufacturing were devastated. And the banksters are not setting up banks in these towns to run, operations for credit swap derivatives. They do that out of New York. They don't need that many people. So you've got banksters sitting on trillions of dollars, more profitable than they've ever been, committing, frankly, in my opinion, crimes. And I don't know if you saw this piece at the front page of the New York Times yesterday, I think it was. Yeah, it was yesterday, because I read it on the train. They pass out the New York Times. It's nice. Amtrak is nice. Anyway, the front page story was about how aluminum is like gold now. Now, why is aluminum like gold? Well, because the banksters have figured out a way to insert themselves in the middle of commodity trades. It used to be, before the Commodity Futures Modernization Act and Phil Gramm and all these bozos, these right-wing bozos and Republicans, and frankly, as I said, some Democrats, Bill Clinton signed the law, but the Commodity Futures Modernization Act was pushed by Phil Gramm and the Republicans. In 1999 and 2000, this stuff happened, where they said, hey, right now, if somebody wants to trade a commodity, they have to be a counterparty. If they want to trade wheat or pork bellies, they actually have to grow wheat or turn it into bread. Or they have to grow pigs or turn them into sausage. And by the way, it has to be a real commodity like wheat or pork bellies. Well, let's change the law. This was Ken Lay's request, by the way. This was Ken Lay of Enron. This was his idea. Let's change the law so that banksters can trade things, and they don't even have to be real things. They can be credit default swaps. They can be insurance policies. They can trade them as if they were a commodity, And because it's an insurance policy, you can take out a policy on a policy. And because you got a policy on a policy, you can take out a policy on the policy on the policy. And you can infinitely expand these things. And that's why there's $700 trillion worth of credit default swaps out there. The whole world GDP is only $65 trillion. And so they're getting rich. Wall Street is up. The banksters are up. People think the economy is good. And meanwhile, America's being hollowed out, and Detroit is the symptom of this free trade insanity. Pure and simple. It's got nothing to do with unions. It's got nothing to do with black people. It's got nothing to do with Democrats. It has to do with Democrats to the extent that they've gone along with Reagan and Nixon's ideas about free trade. But bottom line, this is insane economic policies being played out in a big way. And now what do they want to do? They want to screw the workers, take away their pensions, take away their health care benefits.